having to like run a long-term strategy of like getting out of prison for years and like having a very clear long-term goal like has really like given me like this like ability to understand that some sort of disputes or matters don't really matter. This focus on like cancel culture, for instance, right? It's just like reinforcing like reactionary talking points, in my opinion. You know, it's just like nobody's. If you're getting yelled at on Twitter, you're like that just means you got to change something. So society like is telling you like, you know, like something like maybe they misinterpreted it or whatever, but still like the fact that you placed yourself into a position where you could be misinterpreted, like, you know, it's telling you something, like, in my opinion. And you're not like nobody's jailing you for that, right? Like you're I face real life consequences, so I find it a little irritating whenever people are like, oh well, you know, I'll get yelled at on Twitter. It's like, who cares?
Yeah, I mean that's the Glenn Greenwald I think kind of takes that position because as someone who has been, you know, actually persecuted by states and who has had friends killed because of their political activity and who has had his house recently broken into and his family threatened, you know, he has less sympathy for some of the complaints that are rooted in basically online and social media shaming. I think it's
liberal American journalists who said they were the French resistance under Trump. And we're about to be thrown in Guantanamo Bay for telling bold truths about Vladimir Putin.
Glenn has a lot of hot takes, though. Like,
yeah,
he
but
does have a lot of hot takes.
At the same time, whereas I can understand where he's coming from and kind of also roll my eyes at a certain level of hyperbole, I would like to be able to, you know, appreciate and hold up aspects of Glenn Greenwald's work and to also appreciate him interpersonally on some level while also not agreeing with all of his takes. And that's the part of the cancel culture, if you want to call it that or whatever you want to call it, that I think is legitimate. There are people and takes that become so stigmatized, sometimes validly. Like if you're like, I don't know, obviously if you're Bill Cosby or something and people don't want to associate with you anymore, like you're not canceled, you are actually incarcerated, and that is what it is. But if say you know,
we have accountability. Like, here's the thing: we have accountability structures in place, and like, it's just like this online stuff is just it hurts. I know that it hurts people, and it feels because they put so many eggs in their self-worth basket on social media, which is the algorithm driving that. You know, the like like the reason why you're scrolling for hours and hours and hours, the infinite scroll, content, right? You know, but like that does like this idea that you getting yelled at or whatever on Twitter is like the worst thing ever is like entirely like is entirely a subjective experience, and it means that you need
to be the worst thing ever, though, right? Like that's the own hyperbole.
You need therapy. Like if you're in a position where you're that invested, if you've invested that much self-worth into like your position on social media discourse, you need therapy.
Men would literally criticize Bolsonaro, then go to therapy, and I find that disgusting.
Yeah.
I think the claim isn't necessarily that it's the worst thing ever, and it's not always all online, right? Part of the left's
people make money off of being canceled. People make a hell of a lot of money off of being canceled.
Yep. That's the entire right. That's the entire right now.
Part of the left's
some left people too.
Well, part of the left's objection to the right-wing characterization of cancel culture is that some of the people who have been most definitively, quote-unquote, canceled have been leftists who have advocated for Palestinian rights and such things, who haven't just faced social media scrutiny, but have been fired from their professorships. You could argue
that's different. That's not cancel culture, though. That is like cancel culture. Like what people could know as like being like cancel culture is like getting yelled at on Twitter. Like if you're facing actual like legitimate like day-to-day like consequences, you're facing like accountability. You're either facing accountability structures that are legitimate or you're facing repression. Like those are different.
Take for example, there are these things even that happen wholly in the world of online where the issue isn't that there's blame and people don't want to stand accountable for what they're accused of. Is that the internet can disseminate information that is in fact not truthful, and that people are getting dogpiled about stuff that is actually there's very little relationship to reality. So there have been all these bizarro scandals involving young adult literature where something in a book is between two racially ambiguous characters, and then there's a discourse that emerges on Tumblr that it's racist to write a Black character with green eyes, and now we're just running around saying X author is a racist, because of something that just doesn't really bear any relationship to reality. And that specific combination of kind of an internet telephone game where one person says something to another so that the facts become more and more attenuated from reality, and then there's just like, it's known that X person is toxic or X person is racist or X person is whatever. I think that is something that is real. That's a little bit different than I'm just mad I got Me Too'd. I'm just mad I got caught jerking off in front of someone or whatever.
Okay, so what I mean, and I want to make a distinction here. So what you're describing is what you're describing is usually one of two things, right? It's either a deliberate harassment campaign that has been constructed and construed and although I
don't think it's deliberate. I think a lot of people who participate in these things don't know that what they're spreading is untrue.
Right. And then that's the other part. That's the other part. Yeah. Is like the which is the thing I'm going to say is that the problem isn't people or culture. It is the algorithms that drive it. Right. It is the fact that you are being given information which is false or is interpreted or is faster, and it's spreading faster because you are being like encouraged to engage with it, because engagement is king in the social media space. So by getting that more and more and more engagement and being incentivized to do this, you sort of like are a part of this process, right? And I don't think, and I don't like it. The problem isn't quote unquote the culture. It is the fact that like the social media algorithms are incentivizing this occurrence to happen, and and it's just. I mean, it's just taking advantage of like our worst impulses. And
well, what do you think about this idea that we live in the left in some ways, obviously not in all ways, but in some ways has won the culture war on the basic isms, where even people who are racist, for the most part, will deny it and don't want to be called racist. No one wants to be, people who will actively, oppose, or support some trans bathroom bill will say, I'm not transphobic. There's a way in which even if you are the thing, no one wants to be associated with the label of being ist, right? Yeah. So there's a certain amount of social power in social media in being able to label someone that, or being able to disclaim that you are an ally and represent yourself as such by picking sides in some of these battles. I think that is a cultural reality that has come true, that manifests in all kinds of weird ways, like people, for example, accusing me of being white because I supported Bernie Sanders, because there's so much power in being a certain identity, right? Because there's all these presumptions about what your politics and beliefs are because of the identity. And that leads up to a lot of these perverse outcomes and pile-ons, because people want to demonstrate that they're a good ally, so they make the accusation and distance themselves from the person who is the bad ally, who's the racist or the bigot or the sexist or the homophobe or whatever it is.